Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for your insights today. I think this has been a really useful hearing, and I want to touch on a few of the things that and the themes that we've already talked about today. But first, I think it's important to start by observing that the United States is the global leader in energy production and in environmental protection, and we can keep it that way, right, through innovation, collaboration, and smart regulation. So just looking to the last Congress, we've heard a lot already today about the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and through those, we've shown that we don't have to choose between leading the world in energy production and protecting the environment. We can do both. We have to do both. And what we've seen is that this fall, the United States set another record for domestic energy production, reaching 13.24 million barrels a day in September. At the same time, we established a new program that we've talked about a little today and that I want to focus on, which is a new program to limit our methane emissions, making American exports more competitive in the world market. And I do want to acknowledge the comments from Mr. Peters about how much of that was driven by industry prior to this regulation. I think it's important to understand that we are driving this innovation here. And we have added to that, creating billions in subsidies, creating a flood of energy investment with innovative companies, including many in my district in Houston, leading the way. As these programs roll out, it's really important to ensure that they are administered in a way that incentivizes competition and maintains our edge in protecting the environment and driving energy abundance. And so I really want to direct my questions to Ms. Bradbury about some of these regulations on the methane emissions reduction program, because I think it's important with the time that I have to talk about these provisions contained in the IRA directed the EPA to update Subpart W of the greenhouse gas reporting program. And there's still some uncertainty, despite the 1,600 pages of regulations that have come out, there's still some uncertainty around those regulations, those updates, and it's my understanding that EPA is currently working on developing the updates. So right now, Subpart W requires companies to report estimated annual emissions using prescribed methodologies from scientific studies and collective research. It's one of the issues we talked about when we were crafting the program here, that assessing these fees by a formula has its own set of challenges and affects the incentives. And so, Ms. Bradbury, I want to ask you, in the time that we have, I'm just going to throw out my questions so you can address them. And if we run out of time, if you want to submit them for the record, that's great. But one, can you tell us about the investments and commitments that your member companies are making to reduce emissions? Two, would the inclusion of the ability to include empirical data measuring their own reductions in Subpart W incentivize reduced emissions as opposed to the formula? And then third, can you just touch on, in your opinion, what are the most important factors that EPA should consider when updating Subpart W to incentivize oil and natural gas companies to reduce their methane emissions?
Congresswoman Fletcher, thank you so much for this question on this really critical and not widely understood issue. So Subpart W is how oil and gas industry reports its emissions to the world. It is how America shows its progress. It is based on a rigorous set of emission standards, and it is the best in the world. That being said, it should constantly be updated to ensure it is as accurate as possible. And EPA recently issued a proposed rule to update Subpart W, which we believe goes in the wrong direction. We believe it would actually result in inflated emissions estimates and double counting of emissions. That would not only show increased emissions, not because emissions are be going up, but because the underlying factors and the math has changed. This is also really important because this is the basis for the methane tax. So companies are assessed based on this number. Congress directed and industry asked that EPA include the use of empirical data in terms of how we report emissions, because as we've talked about extensively today, this technology, this innovation is getting better and better, and we want to be able to show our work. And unfortunately, EPA, again, went in the wrong direction and seems to be making it more difficult for companies to use that empirical data, again, both to show their progress to the world, but also, again, on which the methane tax will be assessed. As a result, under the proposed rule, the scope and amount of funds that, of the tax that companies will have to pay has jumped dramatically from where Congress originally passed the methane tax, which you and I didn't necessarily agree on, but I think it has now sort of escalated our concerns because now exponentially more companies will be caught in the methane tax and they will pay exponentially more if EPA's Subpart W is finalized as proposed.
And I'm going to go over my time, but to the extent you could supplement your response in writing with any other factors we should consider, I would appreciate it. I know our chairman would appreciate it. I appreciate you yielding to me, and I yield back. Thank you.